The Member of Parliament for Ayawaso West Wuogon constituency is in the studio. Emmanuel Tremanting is his name. And thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Will you be going to Parliament today?
Yes, I will.
All right. I also have in the studio Abraham Amaleba. He's a legal practitioner, a member of the NDC's legal and communication teams. And he's also here. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Now, let's talk about the subject of national security. Because the National Security Council has called for public vigilance, revealing Tuesday that Ghana faces a likelihood of some terrorist threats of the sort. This was after a meeting at the behest of the president, and the council also advising the general public to be cautious, curious, and report any suspicious activities to law enforcement agencies. We know this is also coming on the back of just from over the weekend, the attacks that were recorded in Côte d'Ivoire, and we should be a lot more frightened than we should be. Is that it?
Sure. Let me say good morning to your viewers. Roland, it is getting closer and closer and closer, don't you think it is? Because when you look at the neighboring countries, Ivory Coast, just 2 days ago, Burkina Faso, Mali, Nigeria have had their fair share. And so we have been told that if your neighbor's beard is on fire, you just get water and then get water close to yours. We are lucky. Up to now, there's no such attempt. And so we will not be forgiven if we don't put in place measures, because the warning signs are enough for us to take measures to attempt to stop it. It is not possible to stop it completely because of the porous nature of our borders. But again, with vigilance on our part and with vigilance on the part of our national security agents, it's possible we'll be able to, ward off some of these attempts.
How can we do that?
We can do that by education. Now, I'm just hearing these things being said, but to what extent do we educate the population, the populace, to know how to suspect people who otherwise you think they are engaged in things that are unacceptable? Do we question people who carry bags and come to earmark sitting places with a bag and say, I'm going to come? Do we question that? Do we? You sit in a bus, somebody comes to sit close to you and say, oh, let me leave this bag, I'm going to buy water and come back. Or you are even at the National Theatre and somebody drops a bag close to you and say he's going out to come. Do we question that? So we will have to begin to educate our people, and also places that are high risk places, the hotels, and I'm talking about these big hotels where you have foreigners going in there, the Accra Mall. Have we stationed military men, police people, the security to be in check? So I think that at this point, the national security apparatus must be investing in what I always term as intelligence gathering, more of intelligence gathering. You see these boys at Nima, they are the same people that probably these terrorist people will begin to use. Let national security go out there, recruit them. It doesn't pay, it doesn't cost us any much. Recruit them. They can give you information as to how people are coming into this country to misbehave. So I think that, yes, vigilance on the part of the population, but again, education as to what citizens should do if they find something suspicious. How do we determine that this is a suspicious act? And so it goes both sides. The national security should be vigilant, and we, as citizens, should also be educated and be vigilant as well.
But just by making people a lot more vigilant also means that we ultimately need to have our security agencies on track. They need to have the right expertise, do the collaboration right. Of course, recently we've seen a lot more of such collaborations being intensified with some of the notable cases of arrest, etc. But it just goes beyond that. Now we can even have this on arrival for for our own citizens in Africa and all that.
Yes.
Does that make us safe?
Well, first and foremost, I want to thank you for having me. It's been a little while, but I'm happy to be.
And thanks for coming too.
I am.
It's got to do with your time. Usually your schedules are tight.
Well, I think that we are living through very difficult times. You know, when 9/11 struck, it sounded so far away, and nobody thought that a day like this will come when our own National Security Council will sit and deliberate and issue warnings of a real danger posed to our national public safety and security. It has been 10 years or more, but definitely Nemesis is almost caught up with us. I think that all of us that have had opportunity to travel up and down, sometimes we have found it is beginning to be increasingly cumbersome to do international travel. In the past, you would just go through. Now you have to go through a scanner. Before you go through the scanner, they would ask you to take off your belt, your shoes.
Very frustrating and depressing body searches.
Very frustrating and depressing body searches, to use your words. But I think that they have learned some lessons, and the unfortunate thing is that the criminally minded people always seems to be a step ahead. You know, one would have thought that after a monumental failure on the part of the American security, I think that they'll accept it. I don't know. With 9/11, it was a failure of. Then everybody's guard was up. In spite of that, many things have happened. There was this bombing in a railway station in Spain. There was a bombing in London. And it keeps going on and on and on and on. So for me, what we need to first and foremost clearly understand is that there is nothing like a foolproof situation. In spite, what we are seeing that in the so-called advanced democracies, where they have better intelligence gathering capability and all of this, in spite of everything they have, things like this still happen. So first lesson, nothing called a foolproof situation. It can happen if it will happen. So I think that is what we need to clearly understand. The security may raise their ante. I am sure that His Excellency the President will probably direct that a lot more expenditure must go into all of this. It is expensive. I mean, he's talking about going to recruit people as listening posts and all of this. They don't come cheap. You will have to pay for it. I'm sure that they will need new gadgets. They will need all sorts of things. The other thing is that we must heighten our collaboration. I don't believe that this war against terrorism is fought individually.
In isolation.
Because particularly in Africa, where our borders are so porous, there is no difference between a border in La Côte d'Ivoire and a border in Ghana. Of course, they will tell you that they were all artificial. So we would certainly need to collaborate. And then I think the other one I will also agree is that as a people, we must begin to heighten our own sense of security. I appreciate the points my colleague here has made. We take everything for granted. You go into a place and somebody has a bag and drops it and goes away. Probably it's nothing, but it could be anything. Recently in Parliament, I was climbing the steps. Sometimes I try to, I'm on the 7th floor, and sometimes at least once in a day, I try to climb the steps.
Instead of taking the lift?
Yeah, just to keep fit a little. And I saw a container.
The corner?
Yeah,
on one of the
stairs, by a door. Then I began to wonder, if this contains some explosives. It was just there. Probably a cleaner had just left it there. But all of us were just going up and down without any sense of. But I can completely agree that it is important. I think that the security people must begin to break down some information and communication things very clearly, so that all of us will begin to become aware that if you see this, do something about it. I mean, when you go to Europe and America, they'll tell you every day at the train station, don't leave your package. If you see a package, report it immediately, and all of this. So the threat is real. There is no foolproof system. The security must raise their ante, but they must also educate us. We shouldn't assume that we know. We must all be educated on exactly what to do.
Mr. Maliba, from half of the last century, we've had insurgencies. It could be the Cuban Revolution, it could be perhaps the Palestinian, it could be maybe once in a while terrorist attacks. I mean, they were not called at the time at an Olympic venue in Munich, etc. But there were real causes for those things to have happened. Now, is it that we don't have the real causes, or why should Ghana even be a target? After all, in the current geopolitics of the time, we're not as important as we should be, and we're still not getting there, apart from Africa.
Yeah, I've heard people, and particularly Ruku Bobe, make the point that we should not be so panicking. Why are we spending so much time, when he was commenting on this postal packets and telecommunication bill.
Messages bill, yeah.
Yeah, that we are not a target. But I say that, look, we don't have to wait to be a target. When you look at the geopolitics, it's not just because probably your nation is a target, but sometimes your nation's foreign policies alone could put you on the front line.
And are we there? Our foreign policy.
We are a nation that belongs to several groupings. Our policy is fashioned around those groupings. You know, ECOWAS, you know, AU, and the non-aligned movement. It depends on how critical your voice is in there. You know, Ghana has a voice in each of these, and they are very loud voices. Yesterday, our president was in a meeting with security chiefs of the West ECOWAS sub-region. Again, the issue was about safety of nationals of the ECOWAS sub-region. So clearly you can see that the West African sub-region is aware of the threats that these groupings, these miscreants, I'll call them, have against the West African sub-region. So I agree with Honorable when he made a point that the fight should not be done individually, but it should be seen as a collective effort of all the West African sub-region and any other groupings that you have. That, for me, would be the best way to go. If you are fighting individually, there's the possibility that these insurgents or these miscreants can infiltrate. So just even yesterday, as we speak, the president presided over such an important meeting. It shows the commitment on the part of West African leaders that these groupings, these insurgent groupings are beginning to become a threat, and we don't need to sit down and allow Ghana to be hit before we can act. So I think that what we are doing now is good, talking about it and putting in place measures to forestall it.
And that will get us there, Mr. Chairman Tejako.
Well, there's no art to know the mine's construction. Nobody really knows.
Perhaps we're being too panicky.
I wouldn't say so. I mean, I believe that discretion is the better part of valor. We should not over-heighten the situation, but we must prepare ourselves. I believe that it is better to overdo this than to underdo this. The other matter of concern to me really is emergency preparedness it is
Our emergency preparedness in terms of when the emergency
in the event that an emergency occurs.
That we're not prepared.
Are we prepared?
What makes you think we're not prepared? Because of an accident happened at Kintampo?
Yeah,
That's just an isolation.
It is not an isolated event at all. It is not an isolated event at all. I mean, do you want me to remind us of our very sad days? Look at what happened at Melcom. It took a private person to start something. You understand? And for me, it is okay. I always say that we are a developing nation, we are a developing democracy. But these are things that must point all of us as a nation that we need to get ready, because in the event that something happens. I mean, sometimes you hear, I have sat in Parliament and I've heard arguments from fire service that these days somehow we are going up. They don't have a lift that goes beyond 6 floors. But a lot of the buildings are 10, 12 floors. In the event that something happens.
They don't have lifts and even tenders?
They don't have a lift and a tender, that will take them up beyond the 5th or 6th floor. But that city is littered with 12, 13-story buildings now. Okay.
But that's good for infrastructure and development.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I have nothing but
and for aesthetic.
This is why I'm saying that my worry is our preparedness.
Okay.
When you do this, you must
have commensurate.
You must have commensurate
emergency
response.
And we don't have it.
And we don't have
June
it.
3.
June
3 fire.
Yes.
Floods.
We are, some real terrorist threat is staring in our face.
And we have to be cautious about
it. In
it.
the event that it happens, touch wood, may it not happen. In the event that it happens.
But it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But Ms. Amali, but that transitions us into this whole context of the year, because we're going to have elections. A lot of things would be happening. For example, the PPP is now saying we need to have a certain rudiment or guideline by which we need to conduct the election. They also say we need to appoint an independent auditor. It depends on how we are able to manage all these as a crisis or as an event. Then we don't metamorphose into the next stage of having all those disagreements, getting or escalating into different levels. How do we go about it? Our elections, security, the way we organize it, the collaboration between the arbiter or the organizer and the various stakeholders to make sure that the country is.
I think, you see, Ghana is a special nation in the sense that we've put in place institutions that can rise up to forestall any eventualities. So, for instance, in Ghana, we have what is called the Peace Council, which is a creation of law. Well, I'm saying this to prove a point that if you allow institutions to work and respect those institutions, we will not get to the point where there will be lawlessness and there will be disorderliness. Because we've put in place mechanisms that can absorb the shocks in this country. If you are dissatisfied with the Electoral Commission's work, and within the Electoral Commission itself, we've put in place a system which will allow the political parties to converse with each other. You know, even though it's an independent body. And that's why when people were saying that the committee put up by the woman, Charlotte,
the chairperson
was illegal. And I asked the question, how about the committee called, what do they call it? The IPAC. IPAC was not supported by law. IPAC was a creation of Afarijan's own imagination. So we should be careful the way we run down institutions. Let's allow the institutions to work. If we are able to do that, there's a Supreme Court and we have a fair-minded judges. See how the results were close. In some countries, once you go to the Supreme Court, you should know that the sitting government has won. But see, 5-4, it shows that we have a strong independent judiciary. And so let's allow the institutions to work. There's a peace council which is there to arbitrate. If we allow the institutions to work, I'm sure that even though it's an election year, we will not get to the point where we will be at each other's throat. But being an election year and being faced with this terrorist act, I agree that we should up our game. We should not allow ourselves to be infiltrated by terrorists who would take advantage of our differences. Our differences here in Ghana should not be exploited by terrorists so that they can come and begin to attack us. I think that's a linkage you want in this discussion.
Now, for example, the PPP is saying that we need an independent verifier who, that will be an audit firm, and they will publicly declare the election. But we know that according to the regulations we have, the Electoral Commission is supposed to do that. If they want to employ whatever second agency to do that, of course, that will have to be done in consonance or in some kind of buy-in with the various stakeholders and the various political parties. Are you in agreement with this? And what will warrant the PPP to?
Okay, let me say this. You see, we must draw a very fine line of being straightforward, being honest, being open, being transparent.
Are you saying we're not?
I think that is the challenge.
That we're skeptical of ourselves, about our own honesty.
My good friend is just making some comparisons here. I mean, how do you compare IPAC with this other group that was formed, Election Steering Committee? You are comparing
apples with oranges. Aren't they all supposed to be working committees, so to speak?
Look, at the end of the day,
not having necessarily legal basis, but having some kind of complementary.
Because both of them have no legal basis, you still can't compare. IPAC, we need to go back to clearly understand how IPAC was formed and how this was formed. At the end of this, you have IPAC. Everybody on the committee turns around to say that we didn't even know that something like this was happening. Why is the transparency? Why is the transparency in a matter like this? But you see, I want to come back and to the substantive issue and not be diverted by what my friend Amava said. I will cite two examples, but I will premise this on the fact that it is important that government agencies work. I will rehash what President Obama said when he visited our country, that Africa does not need strong men, Africa needs strong institutions. My clear understanding is that these strong institutions, a character of their strength is that they are independent, they are fair, they are open, and they do not take sides.
But clearly, one of the best institutions you can find, despite all the faults that we tend to mention and point towards it, is Ghana's Electoral Commission. They've been very much independent.
I will not contend.
Not necessarily, perhaps you can't say fair-minded, but they've been very independent as they can be in taking.
You see, I will not contend you on a matter like this. I think that the viewers out there are the best judges. But what I want to say is that today, if PPP is calling for something which for me is even outside
the remit,
and
even the laws,
it is a clear indication that somebody is beginning to think, what is wrong with these guys?
That there's some level of mistrust?
There's a huge level of mistrust.
Is it not because the political party as stakeholders want it to be so?
Roland, can you, if you just permit me to, I said I wanted to make two very clear points. I would take your...
Very well, sir.
The second example I want to give is recently the IGP came up and said that they were going to clamp down on all vigilante groups, party vigilante groups. You see, I'm not learned. I haven't done too much school, but I hear that when you study politics, one of the things they will tell you about the functions of the state is that while it is called a state, is that it must ensure the safety of the people. We have agreed to become the Republic of Ghana. If we were not the Republic of Ghana, I'll be holding my machete and my gun, you will be doing. But now that we are we leave that responsibility to the state. The state has a cardinal responsibility to ensure the safety. To the extent that the police is doing that, nobody will form a vigilante. If anybody has cause to believe that they will not be protected adequately, fairly by the police, then people begin to find ways of preserving themselves.
After all, are you claiming that it's because the ground has festered for such groups to?
Yeah, I think so.
To emerge.
The fact that
because there's no trust and they don't have the confidence that the police can do what they're supposed to do. The fact that
vigilante groups exist across the spectrum of political parties is a clear indication that all of us are beginning to think that we may not be receiving adequate, fair, I mean, for me, cardinal, fair.
That's a conjecture from
be that as it may. But let us look at it. Do they exist? Yes, they exist. And why do people form vigilantes? They form vigilantes to preserve. It's an act of self-preservation. You understand? So my take on this is that IGP, to the extent that you provide an all-embracing, fair protection to all of us, that protection is devoid of color, then nobody will go that extra mile because it is worrisome. It is. Nobody wants to do it. Okay. You understand? To the extent that all of us believe that the Electoral Commission is fair, that the Electoral Commission will not look behind everybody when everybody is not watching and appoint a certain steering committee and say that we're part of it, and people come back to say that we're not part of it. If something goes to IPAC and all of us agree on it and it is implemented, if the Electoral Commission will tell all of us that, if the Electoral Commissioner will sit before all of us in a press conference and say, NV, no verification, no vote, but goes back to say that if you can be verified, you can vote on the day of election. You know, it creates a situation of a clear case.
Roland,
now, I know you want to add something, but if, let's say, I wouldn't necessarily say comment, but we have opinion very much grounded or consolidated coming from the political parties who are key stakeholders in this whole electioneering, and they posit some of these their own comprehensive messages across. Doesn't that give a certain sense for worry when we know that by law and by what the moral authority is, we have a body like the Electoral Commission that needs to get the buy-in of the various stakeholders, but is not getting the buy-in, and so kind of compromises its ability to be able to undertake its own objective for which it has been set up.
You rightly indicated that our EC is one of the best institutions, not just only in Ghana, but Africa and the world. Our EC have been commended.
He was making about how independent or so an institution needs to be. And I said, as far as
that's what I'm saying, that it is not in doubt that our EC has been commended worldwide. Indeed, our EC is being sought after by other countries to train them. The Nigerian people that you are talking about,
who's talking about?
That they have provided or delivered a good election.
Who talked about?
It is this our EC that contributed to the success of the Nigerian elections, and this was said by their own JAGA. So, but if you have a group of people whose modus operandi is just to run down an institution because they are not getting their way, then no matter what that institution does, it will not see favor from those people. If there's a mindset that, oh, can you imagine today, the MPP are saying that Afari-Gyan is better than Charlotte, yet this is a man you crucified and had all of us think the way you were thinking. It's not yet up to 1 year. you've done a 360-degree turnabout.
What is it?
And say that Afarijan was better.
Is it not by comparison?
By comparison.
No, but
Not
comparison.
not
There's
necessarily.
nothing called absolute. You can always compare.
Imagine,
Not necessarily by saying that you want to.
Porous
can you imagine?
argument is this?
Can you imagine how Afarijan was vilified by this same group of people?
Well, he may have
Then-
had flaws,
then-
and those flaws could be pointed out.
Let me
and-
finish. Carried all of us along. But if not, but some of us who still had our hairs firmly fixed on our necks
Look at
would
him.
have gone along with them.
Because you belong to a different political
would have
party.
gone
that
along
has-
with them.
What
that
haven't
has
you-
different-
what haven't you people
turn
said
around.
about- what haven't you people
when
said
were
about
talking, I was
electoral
keeping
commission?
quiet. When you were talking, I was keeping quiet. You made very contentious statements.
Oh.
And I didn't react.
Just debate me.
See,
Allah Muhammad.
so
So
my
debate
point
me.
is that if you have a group of people whose modus operandi is, I will not accept whatever comes out from an institution, then you are not going to have any consensus. But critical to this argument is that we should allow the EC to manifestly, and I'm saying manifestly because it should be seen by everybody, manifestly show the people of this country how transparent the process will be. I don't want a situation where you have a group of people who are always stampeding the EC. We want you to do this. If you don't do this within 2 days, we'll go on the street. You are not the only people in this country. This country is inhabited by people who think like you and people who don't think like you. And so to be stampeding the EC is, for me, trying to run down the same institution. Look, there is no way we can ever bring CIA to conduct elections here. There's no.
So you are saying we need to believe in
the
our own
EC and
EC.
help the EC to grow, and that is what
I
the PPP are doing.
I think that is true, but also if the institution has faults,
You point it out,
yes.
but not to threaten.
Who has
If you
threatened?
don't do this, we'll go onto the street.
Let's look at it.